Hi folks, welcome back to the channel and welcome back today to the plot. I'm just over the moon to be up here again making videos. It's been a little while and because of that I think today we'll have a little tour. I'll show you what I've been up to. There's some good things, some bad. We'll have a little tour and a little wander around and a chat. But as well, I'm really excited to be talking a little bit about my winter plans. There's a few changes that I want to make, which I think should be quite interesting and I'm really excited to talk about. And just looking in the greenhouse now, I can see there's, as always, lots of work to be doing on the peppers. So if there's time, I'll show you a little bit of the peppers at the end. So it's been a little while since I did a video, and normally if I've taken a break, that means I've not been coming up to the plot and it's all got a bit wrong. This summer, however, has been really nice actually. I started taking lunch breaks, which I don't normally do. Normally I just work right through. But I've started forcing myself to take lunch breaks. They come up to the plot and I've just been really, really enjoying it. I do a few little jobs, take a few little harvests. Most of the time and effort goes onto the chili peppers, but it's just been really nice. So the plot is looking okay, you know, it's looking okay. And as well, I've not been doing videos because I had a project that's been taking up all of my evenings in the garden. I'm sure I'll show you that at some point, and maybe I've got a little clip now, but that was one of those jobs that just thought would be quick, and it just turned into a bigger and a bigger thing that took more and more time and became more complicated, which is just classic, is what happens every time I do something. So anyway, I digress. Let's talk about the bed. This is where I tried to grow carrots repeatedly and my efforts were thwarted. They just didn't want to germinate. Eventually we got some, but we also had some volunteer tomato plants in here. It was just the scraggliest mess and I thought maybe we'll get some carrots, and I pulled them all up 2-3 weeks ago and sure enough, we did have some. They were probably, the biggest was about 4 inches. Some of them were okay. The pebble sun were awful. I think they were the only ones that actually germinated properly, so they were way too densely planted and it was just a mess. But a few of them have made nice roast carrots with our Sunday roast, so could be a lot worse. And the beetroot in here were really successful, and the radish, and generally not a bad bed. But you can see as well now, I've got this planted up with leeks and they do pretty much just look like blades of grass, but they've been in here 2 or 3 weeks now, I think 2 weeks, and they're looking okay. The slugs have left them alone, touch wood, and it's quite late to have put these in. I mean, most people have got their leeks in sort of 2, maybe 3 months ago. So I have no idea if these will do okay. These are giant winter leeks, and you might remember I completely forgot about these. I actually found the pot in the undergrowth. And this is my pot of leeks, and it was hidden down here on this sleeper for the greenhouse for ages, like maybe a month, as all of this vegetation just grew up around it. Really, it's remarkable they've survived. There are a couple of red onions in here as well that have somehow snuck in. Not sure how that's happened, but that's bed number 1. So I've already done an episode on this year's potato harvest, and bed 2 is looking pretty messy, but I've still got about half of my main crop potatoes in the ground here, and fingers crossed they should be storing okay. And sure enough, here's a little one, and these look absolutely fine. No slug damage on this one or anything like that, so I'm content to leave these for a little while longer, but should probably give this a good weed at some point soon. But I've been very fortunate this year not to get any potato blight. I was a little bit worried because some of the dieback looked a little bit suspicious, but fortunately I've been really lucky. Not so lucky with my tomato at home. That did get a bit sad, but the next bed, the courgettes and the squash, these are slow, but they're doing okay. They look pretty healthy. Just a little bit worried that they're a bit too late. This courgette plant in particular, I mean, I've had 2 courgettes off this, 2 tiny little courgettes, and you know what it's normally like. Normally you got more courgettes than you can use. Oh, these marigold plants are looking really nice. So I couldn't grow any marigolds last year, so I just really enjoying this splash of colour. This was my round courgette, still is my round courgette, and these are doing really well. This is much more traditional. I'd lost count of how many big round courgettes we've had. They're really like difficult to spot. They're suddenly just there and they're already too big. And this is butternut squash. These, lots of flowers on this one. Oh, And we've just got our first little fruit. I think there's two or maybe three little fruit. So still in its infancy and a little bit of discoloration, but I think that's going to be fine. One thing I do need to do is figure out how on earth I harvest these leek seeds. A few of them are already sprouting actually in the head, but if you kind of pull one of these seeds, they're still very moist inside. I assume they need to dry out. Maybe I need to cut them off. Let me know in the comments what to do. How do I harvest leek seeds? Yeah, this is really wet. Now, you remember just now I said that a few red onions managed to sneak into the leeks? Well, this is vice versa. We've got a leek here that has snuck into the red onions, and actually I tried to pull this up. I thought it was a big onion, and I tried to pull it up, the leaves came away, and I was like, I don't think that's an onion. But there's a few red onions still in here, and I did pull one just now, and it was very white rot. This one, also very white rot. This one is okay. Let's have a look. This one's also okay. Sort of a mixed bag. And this one's also okay. These were just the kind of stragglers that were really small, so I thought they might get a bit bigger. They have not. I'm going to dispose of this one very carefully. I've been reading a lot about white rot recently, and it doesn't spread through spores. When you get an infected onion, you get these little kind of black, they've got a scientific name, the black things, nodules, and that's what stays in the soil for up to 7 years. I can't see any on here, but I'm not taking any more chances. I don't want this spreading. So that's that gone. And the broccoli plants, these were looking really sad. For a little while I was getting really worried because they were just getting so mullered by the slugs, you know. They looked really, really sad. And what I've used actually, surprisingly, is coffee grounds. I've used a load of coffee grounds from a coffee shop around the base because I read that that's meant to really help deter slugs and snails, and they've bounced back pretty nice. You do need to be careful with coffee grounds because they can make the ground quite acidic, and you need to be careful of that with brassicas especially because you know, they prefer a more calcareous soil. And in here I've left one of my lettuce plants to go to seed, and it's been flowering, and soon enough I'll have to figure out how to get some seed from this, and it'll be nice to have my own grown lettuce seed. And in fact, there's one of the broccoli plants back here that has just not recovered. And I'll shoot a clip of this because this is really small compared to the rest. And I've just been checking these as well when I come up, looking for any signs of snails or anything like that. Just taking them off, and they look really bad, but I promise you, there's been no cabbage whites in here. A couple of butterflies, but definitely no caterpillars, but they're bouncing back, which is really positive. My trusty kneeler, because I'm getting old. Down here we've got the L bed, which is losing a lot of definition with these paths. So it's not so much an L bed anymore, but we do have some successes in amongst the calendula here. We've got my first properly formed butternut squash, which I'm really excited about. These are just one of my absolute favourite things to grow and eat. They're just so gorgeous. The apple tree behind me this year, they're looking pretty good, but they are absolutely infested with some kind of larvae again. I think it might be a moth whose name I've forgotten the name of. I did research, and I think that was what was causing those kind of webs on it earlier in the year as well, but pretty much every one of those apples is kind of rotting from the inside with these bugs, and I need to look at whether or not there's kind of biological or chemical control or something. Behind me here, I've got my summer sunburst patty pan squash as well, which has been incredible all summer. We've just got one or two little fruits on there, but that has just given us so many summer squashes, which is just wonderful. These have been a real pleasure. More calendula seed heads to harvest. I love getting these seed heads. It's really quite therapeutic. But yeah, there's the very dead sad courgette in here as well, and just down here my very, very sad cucumber, which did nothing, unsurprisingly. But all things considered, quite a good bed. And last, well, I was going to say last but not least, but this is kind of last but least. This is the strawberry raised bed. and you'd be forgiven for not knowing that it's a raised bed. It's probably completely completely hidden with the weeds, and this has always been a troublesome bed with the weeds, but this year, because the strawberries were just horrible, my main crop kind of strawberries just tasted foul. I just said, you know what, I'm going to forget about this because it's so much effort to keep clear. But the good news is these alpine strawberries, which also tasted quite nasty at the start of the season as bindweed, did actually come good. This one's, and they're just so sweet. It's almost like bubble gum, you know. They're just so sweet and a real pleasure. So I have been enjoying those, but this bed needs something doing to it. And one good thing, one big silver lining, I did actually manage to get some strawberry runners this year. I tried last year. I really tried last year actually, and they just didn't take. So I'm really pleased that I've got some, and I can plant those probably in here. And there's a few things wrong with this bed. They're kind of planted too densely, the alpine strawberries especially. Some of the plants are really just very old. So I'm going to take those out, replace them with some new runners that have been grown, and I'll probably place a few other plants in a few beds here and there, and hopefully they'll take off quite well. And it kind of brings me on to my plans for winter, but I think one of the things I am going to do, because this bed is just so incredibly weedy, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to say it, it's very controversial, but I think I'm going to employ some black plastic matting. I've already bought it, and it's not the woven stuff. People differ on opinion, but you can get the woven stuff, which is lots of strands of plastic and they knit together. But it's really hard to cut, and when it starts to break down, you just get these shreds of plastic that just get stuck in the soil and the environment for ages and ages. So I've got the non-woven stuff. It's pretty strong, heavy duty, and I think I'm going to be employing it in a few places around the allotment, and this bed is definitely one of them, because it just gets impossible to see where the strawberries start and end and where the weeds begin. So I think this is definitely a good place to use it. And let's talk about some of the other winter plans. So plans for winter. If you go on YouTube right now and type in allotment, I'm pretty sure about 80% of the videos that come up are going to be talking about September sowing and growing over winter to kind of like maximize your productivity. And that's all great stuff. And there's some really interesting things you can do, but I'm not focusing on that this winter. I tried to grow a few things over winter last year, and even on the south coast of the UK where it's very mild, I've basically had no results. And if you look around on an allotment, you'll see most people don't bother with that, and I think there's a reason why. And I think that my energy could be better spent on the plot this year by making a few big changes, because one of the issues I've had over summer is the paths, essentially, and the amount of maintenance and work that they require. Most of my effort in terms of like maintenance doesn't go onto the actual bed and weeding the beds. They do require that, but it's pretty easy to just run through it with a hoe and keep on top of it. But it's the paths and mowing and bringing the strimmer up and pushing back the vegetation to make the paths look neater, and you know, stop them growing into the crops and messing with them. And so you get the picture. And what I'm going to do is remove a few of these paths. Probably going to remove this one and remove this one and combine it into a big traditional kind of growing area for an allotment. I should have said at the start, I'm not doing raised beds. I didn't mean to get anyone's hopes up, but I'm not doing raised beds yet. Anyway, it always makes me laugh. I get scores of comments saying, hey, you need to do raised beds, they'll make your life so much easier, reduce the maintenance. And then I get just as many saying, I'm so glad you don't do raised beds, I hate mine, or they're useless and they just magnet for slug hotels. It's a really divisive topic, but for me, I like growing in the ground. There's something kind of just a bit traditional and kind of organic, I guess, about it. You know, nothing against raised beds, but for me, this is what I want to do for now. Anyway, I don't know what will happen in the future, but I definitely want to combine this into one big area. And as well, I do still like a grass path, so I'm going to make this one wider and basically kind of frame the greenhouse a bit more. It'll be a big path to the greenhouse, and then I'm going to combine the other 3 beds the other side of it. And one of the things that will really help with is netting, and the amount of weeds and stuff that grow up through the netting are just a constant hassle and pain. And it's just one of those things that kind of, you know, I don't want to feel about the allotment. I want to feel excited, and it should just make life a bit easier in theory anyway. So that's one of the things that's going to keep me busy over winter. There's nothing too complex. I think I'm just going to dig this up, turn it over. All of this organic matter will get added to the soil. I can add compost, you know, the normal stuff. It should be fairly low effort. And I'm really looking forward to it. The other thing that I want to do is this year I've bought some cover crops. So I am going to be growing some stuff over winter, but not traditional crops. And cover crops are meant to just be really, really good for your soil. I've never tried them. It's going to be a bit of an experiment, and we'll see how it goes. I might leave some beds bare, maybe cover them with plastic and do a bit of comparison. I love to experiment, but we'll see. We'll see if it ever happens. But that's my winter plans, and I'm really excited because I've kind of had this going on in the back of my head as an idea for a while. I wasn't sure whether to make it official, but I've said it now, so I've got to do it. So that's pretty much an overview of this year so far, what I want to do over winter. I'm feeling pretty positive, and I have no idea how long the video has been going on for, but as ever, I can see into the greenhouse, and I think I've got to do I'll try and keep it quick. I'll just try and give you a quick overview of the chilies because they're doing so well this year. So one of the questions I was this whole situation is ridiculous. One of the questions I was kind of always eager to find out the answer to is whether or not I would regret cramming the greenhouse full of this many chili peppers. And some days I think, yes, I really regret this. It's absolutely stupid and it's ridiculously time consuming. And other times I just enjoy the sheer absurdity of how much stuff I've packed in here. I'll show you what I've got to do pretty much every kind of 3 or 4 days. It's ridiculous. So really there's kind of 3 steps to this that I'm doing most of the time that I'm up here with these. And the first is just getting them out, and it's really good to kind of have a bit of an observation. You know, I'm always looking at the peppers, seeing how they're doing. This one, for example, is a Sugar Rush Long Peach, but it's just got barely any fruit on it. And I've got 2 other Sugar Rush Long Peach in the greenhouse that I'm comparing with different treatments, and they're so much further ahead of this one. It's really interesting to make these kind of mental notes as you go. I do make actual notes as well, but it's really good to check for watering as well. Checking the weight of these peppers is probably the best way to know when they need water, and you don't want to be over watering them. So the kind of weight is key, and seeing whether or not they're wilting as well. This one's starting to look a little bit wilty, so they're in need of some water, which is not surprising given the size of these. They're probably going through it, but that's step 1. Just getting everything out, and that feels like a mission in and of itself. They're also tangled into each other as well. Some of the plants really like to splay out. It can be a lot of work, and you get a little bit anxious, you know, you don't want to break all the branches off. I've had a few of those, which is not great. But step 2, watering. And this is really surprisingly time consuming. When you've scaled up to this many plants, you probably, well, A, you shouldn't be doing it in this smaller space because it's just so inefficient, but also you probably want to look at some kind of automated watering system, some kind of irrigation or drippers or something, so that you don't need to be doing this as regularly. Oh, some of these peppers are so, they look so good. And I've not got the kind of capacity to do that really. So I've just been hand watering here, and I have to make up a lot of fertilizer. They're at that stage where they need fertilizing very regularly. Pretty much every time I water them, I'm fertilizing them unless for some reason I just don't have time. And so I've got to make that up into a little jug, and then I've got to put the jug into a watering can and individually water them. I kind of like to check each pepper in pots anyway. I check the weight individually because I don't want to be giving any of the peppers too much water. It's easy done. The ones up here do tend to dry out pretty quick actually, because they're in much smaller pots, and these need watering probably every 2 days realistically, 2 or 3 days. So, and to get up here, I've got to move them all out. So that is step 2. And step 3, by far the most time consuming part, is the harvesting. And the reason that it's so time consuming is because I'm doing so many experiments this year and comparing different yields from different peppers and different treatments. And so for pretty much every plant that I do a harvest of, I've got to use one of these little food bags. And I've forgotten it again. I always forget my permanent marker. So I keep doing this. I've not brought it up with me today. I need to like put it somewhere where I remember, because I make a note on here, and for each of these peppers, they normally get their own bag. And there's quite a few on here at the moment. These orange habs and the peach ghosts, they're just starting to come to fruit. And yeah, I just really want to have accurate results from the experiment. So doing all this weighing and harvesting is really time consuming, but it will be worth it in the end. And some of these plants are doing incredibly. All of these super hots are just full of flowers at the moment. But that is my kind of chili pepper routine, and it's a lot, but I don't think I regret it. These give me so much joy. Like, they just, you can see it as I talk about them, you know, it just puts such a smile on my face. They're so cool. Their fruits are so cool. The colors, the different types of, you know, the morphology of the leaves, the phenotypes, I just love it. There's back here as well, we've got my CGN, which I've kind of crammed into there. And I can't actually pull that out, but it's doing very well. It's got the tiniest little fruit on it yet. I could talk about chili peppers all day, but I won't. I'll stop there. I really hope you've enjoyed today's little update and having a look at the plans for winter. It's sort of turned into a bit of a year in review, actually, which I quite enjoyed, but it's been great. It's just been great to be up here today. Thank you ever so much for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you again next time.